Exposed. 3 sinister hidden camera horror stories that will haunt you forever. Abigail's heart pounded the moment she stumbled upon the hidden camera. It sat inconspicuously in the fern on her windowsill, a shiny black eye peering into the most intimate corners of her home. She froze, her breath hitching in her throat. How long had it been watching? The din of the diner faded as panic clawed at her insides. The gentle hum of Millfield, where children laughed and neighbors waved from their porches, now felt like a ticking clock of dread. That evening was just like any other after a long shift at the diner, fatigue weighing on her shoulders while she gently rocked her youngest to sleep. Abigail had barely closed the front door before memories of whispered secrets and red flags flooded her mind. Her neighbor, Mr. Thompson, a friendly churchgoer with a kind smile, had offered to watch the kids any time she needed help. But that was all before this betrayal. Every warm interaction was now a sharp reminder that trust could be deceptive, a word that twisted in her gut. Her heart raced as she watched the footage play out on her phone. Flickering images revealed normal family moments, her daughter coloring, her son building with blocks. But beneath these innocent scenes, shadows shifted near the edges, figures dark and unrecognizable, lingering just beyond her vision. Each moment felt less like a memory and more like a threat, an invisible force holding her family hostage. Was it simply paranoia? Or something more? A chill of realization sent shivers down her spine. She stepped outside, gripping her keys tightly, venturing into the suffocating silence of the night. Who could she trust? Her once cozy neighborhood seemed bathed in a sinister light, each porch light flickering ominously, winking like a warning to stay away. As she walked, fear coursed through her veins, leaving her breathless. Shadows danced at the corners of her vision. Taunting her, was her imagination creating these horrors, or was she truly being hunted? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Back in her living room, the oppressive darkness seemed to close in around her as she confronted Mr. Thompson. His eyes darted, a predatory glint that sent her heart racing. Why was he avoiding her gaze? As she pressed him on the camera, the way he forced a smile sent icy fingers down her spine. Was the kind demeanor simply a mask hiding something far more sinister? Doubts began to swirl, with the whispers of old townsfolk legends echoing in her mind, the dark tales of a spirit that thrived on fear, feeding off families marked by betrayal. Night after night, the feeling of being watched consumed her. Each creak of the house, once a comforting lullaby, now roared like a beast. Abigail's resolve to keep her children safe sharpened like a knife, but so did her fear. Then came the night when the knock echoed through her empty home, a solitary sound that shattered silence. Breath held tight in her throat, Abigail felt veins run cold as she moved toward the door. Who stood on the other side? Was it Mr. Thompson, or had something more malevolent come to claim her family? She turned the doorknob, and her heart raced. As the door creaked open, she found nothing but emptiness on the porch. A single black feather lay at her feet, the essence of something deeper, darker. Abigail's blood ran cold. Who was watching over her children now? Abigail stepped back, eyes glued to the feather. It was like a harbinger of doom, a reminder that she was not in control. The wind whispered against her skin, icy fingers snagging at her resolve. Whatever was out there, it was closer than she had imagined. She closed the door, locking it with a decisive click, though it offered little comfort. The walls felt as though they were closing in, the shadows pooling heavier in the corners of her living room. The camera footage played in her mind like a twisted slideshow, uninvited memories spiraling into a nightmarish montage. Her children, were they truly safe? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen, startling her from her thoughts. Heart hammering, she gripped the edge of the couch, knuckles white. Unable to ignore the sound, she crept toward the kitchen, each step slow and deliberate. The familiar scent of stale coffee lingered in the air, one she had intended to clean up before bed. The kitchen was a disaster. The chair that normally sat by the table was toppled, The ceramic mug she cherished lay shattered on the floor, dark liquid pooling beneath it. She needed to think clearly, but a dread darkness pooled in her gut, pulling her down. Panic threatened to twist her thoughts further. She fumbled for her phone, desperate for light amidst the void. When it illuminated the room, the shadows retreated slightly, yet still loomed just beyond reach. She flicked through the recording app, catching her breath at the realization she could record evidence proof that something was wrong. As the red light blinked on, she started to capture her surroundings, speaking softly, her voice unsteady but firm. "If anyone is watching this, I need help." A soft scraping made her whimper, her pulse quickening as she turned to face the doorway leading to the darkened hallway. Shadows flowed, almost shifting like smoke. "Hello?" she called out, feigning bravery. Her voice didn't echo back, and the silence felt heavy enough to crush her. Just as she was about to retreat, she felt a cool rush of air glide past her neck. A dread-laden chill skated down her spine like ice. Instinctively, she turned her phone flash toward the hallway, the beams slicing through the darkness. Nothing was there, but something had stirred it. She could feel it. The moment stretched, an eternity unfolding as she wrestled with the decision to stay and fight, or flee. The cries of her children echoed through her mind, fueling her courage. Then came another sound, this one unmistakable. A soft, feathery rustling cascaded into the room behind her, and she twisted to find the source. There, perched on the window ledge, was a crow, its beady eyes reflecting the light. It cawed, the sound both dissonant and oddly familiar, chilling Abigail to the bone. She remembered reading about the symbolism of crows, messengers of both secrets and death. The birds were always believed to bring warnings, omens of dark things to come. Her heart raced as a storm of emotions clashed within her. Was it here as a sign? Or had it come to further taunt her already frayed nerves? Then came a thud upstairs, heavy and unyielding, like something being dragged. Abigail's breath caught in her throat as dread filled her with icy tendrils. What was up there? The urge to flee gnawed at her, but the calls of her children kept her rooted. With shaky resolve, she bolted for the stairs, drawn to the sound. Each step felt like a descent into madness, deeper into the unknown. As she neared the top, her heart thundered in her ears. What awaited her? And just before she reached the final step, a door slammed shut somewhere down the hall. Abigail's breath hitched, heart quickening as she stood frozen. Was there truly someone or something inside her home? Or was this all a macabre trick of her mind spiraling into fear? A chill swept through the air as she reached for the doorknob, hands trembling. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open. But what she found on the other side would change everything. The door creaked open, revealing a partially darkened room. The air was stale, thick with the lingering scent of dust, and something more sinister. Abigail squinted against the dimness, the camera's light cutting through the shadows like a blade. She stepped inside, each footfall echoing loudly in her ears, a twisted drumbeat that matched her racing heart. The room was her children's playroom, but it felt inherently wrong. Toys were strewn across the floor, a once cheerful space now wrapped in eerie silence. Abigail scanned the room, her breath shallow as she searched for any sign of her children. Where were they? The sheer emptiness clawed at her mind, a gnawing terror building in the pit of her stomach. Suddenly, a soft giggle broke through the silence, a sound so innocent, yet so out of place. Abigail whirled around, her pulse spiking. "Tommy? Lily?" she called, hope and dread intertwining. Another giggle, this time accompanied by a faint whispering. She could almost make out the words "come play." They fluttered in the air, haunting melodies that sank into her bones and froze her in place. "Stay away from them," Abigail shouted, desperation spilling out. Sounds of shifting came from the corner, where the shadows were darkest. She switched the camera focus, attempting to illuminate the source. The light danced erratically, revealing nothing but more darkness. "Mommy, help us!" The voices pulled at her heart like puppet strings, but something twisted in her gut. They didn't sound quite right. They were her children's voices, yet layered, twisted, unnaturally pitched. Abigail took a step back, retreating slowly, but the shadows surged, pooling at her feet. She could feel them tugging, shifting, almost sentient. With shaky resolve, she turned and dashed back to the hallway, the dread of discovery breathing down her neck. The thuds from upstairs echoed louder now, a heavy thumping rhythm that sent shocks of terror coursing through her. She needed to find them. Over and over again, her instincts battled with her reason, a consuming spiral of conflicting emotions. Racing up the stairs, she braced herself at the top landing. The noises had stopped. An unnerving silence settled, thick as smoke. The front door of the hallway bathroom stood ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning her in. She could almost feel the pull of it, like a magnet urging her to step closer. "Tommy? Lily?" she whispered, her voice barely audible, cracking with fear. She reached for the door, her fingers cold and shaking against the handle. Taking a deep breath, she pushed it open. The bathroom was empty but for the mirror reflecting her pale face, terror etching lines into her features. "Get out." A raspy voice shot from the darkened corner behind her, spitting the words like venom. Abigail whirled, heart racing again as she flicked the light toward it. Nothing. Just darkness gathering a pulsating silence that felt alive. She backed into the doorway. Her breathing became erratic. Was this part of it? The dread? The shadows? The floor creaked behind her. She spun back to the mirror, and her reflection suddenly grinned back at her, wide and malevolent. Panic surged. "This isn't real," she shouted, shaking her head violently. As she fumbled for the door behind her, she felt a cold hand wrap around her wrist, icy fingers squeezing tightly. The vague laughter of her children echoed all around her, mingling with the raspy voice, creating a cacophony of terror that was overwhelming. And then, just as suddenly, it all went silent again, leaving only her breath and a single whispered word hanging in the air. "Stay." Abigail couldn't think. Adrenaline surged, and she yanked free, sprinting out of the bathroom and down the hall. She dodged toward the child's bedroom down the hall, heart pounding as she grasped for a way to break the horror enveloping her. But the tall, dark figure standing at the end of the hall made her heart stop. Its eyes glowed a fiery red in the dim light. The moment stretched, terror consuming her. What did it want? Who was it? Then the figure took a step forward, and Abigail felt her breath hitch, a sense of dread foretelling that the worst was yet to come. With her back against the wall, she steeled herself. This was a fight now. But the figure opened its mouth, and in a voice that sent chills through her very soul, it whispered, "You really should have stayed where you were." A scream tore from her throat, echoing into the abyss. What lay in the shadows behind her? What danger lurked just out of sight? The nightmare was far from over. Abigail stumbled backward, the figure advancing with unnatural grace. Its red eyes glared at her. She could feel the tension in the air, electrifying and thickening with every heartbeat. The whispers curled around her, swirling like smoke. "You should have stayed," it hissed, each word dripping with malice. "Get away from me." Her voice cracked as she fought to regain control, her body screaming at her to run. She darted past the figure, adrenaline spiking in her veins as she ran toward the children's bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. A sliver of light gushed out like a lifeline. Inside, confusion reigned. Toys lay scattered not just on the floor, but also on the bed, the walls. A kaleidoscope of colors turned into a sickening mess under the pale glow. "Tommy! Lily!" she hollered again, her throat raw and desperate. The laughter that had haunted her moments before returned, now layered with something darker, something that twisted her stomach. "Mommy, come and play." It echoed from the closet, a chilling sweetness that cut through the air. She approached the closet, every step heavy with dread. "What is going on?" She muttered more to herself than anyone else. Abigail's hand trembled as she pulled the door open. The darkness was profound, an almost living thing that reached out to her. There was nothing but shoes, hanging clothes, and that dreadful laughter, louder now. Then, from behind her, she heard the floor creak again. Cold dread sank into her, and she swung around, ready to face the looming figure. But nothing was there except the vast, devouring silence. Heart pounding, she turned back to the closet, determined to make sure her kids weren't trapped within. "Tommy? Lily?" Her heart raced with a tempo only fear could compose. "I'm here." Frantically, she unceremoniously started pulling everything out, tossing toys and clothes aside, desperation clawing at her throat. Suddenly, a small hand reached out from the dank hollow, clutching the edge of the closet. Abigail gasped, her heart leaping into her throat. "Oh, thank God." But when the child emerged, it wasn't either of her children. The figure was small and pale, with wide, sunken eyes that gleamed with mischief. A chilling grin spread across its face, stretching lips too thin to be real. "Mommy," it said, voice an echo of her child's, "Stay, please." She recoiled, panic flooding her senses as she realized the truth. This wasn't her child. This twisted imitation wore her children's face, marring her sanity. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was a deliberate manipulation, a trap laid out with cruel intent. "What are you?" she stammered, backing away. The sinister grin widened. The urge to flee surged through her, but where could she go? The hallway lay behind her. The dark figure was somewhere out there waiting. There were whispers, a chorus surrounding her with inhuman lilt. "Come play, join us, forever." She turned and bolted from the room, desperation bubbling within her. Each footstep quickened as shadows reached for her, claws of darkness scratching at her heels. She dashed down the hallway, but the walls seemed to stretch, elongating like a twisted nightmare. "Mommy, come back." The cries merged with giggles, enveloping her in sinister mirth. Abigail couldn't comprehend where she was running to anymore. The house felt alive, turning against her. The front door loomed at the end of the hall, but before she could reach it, the tall figure emerged again, blocking her way. "You can't leave," it said, voice gravelly and low, echoing through her bones. Without thinking, Abigail lunged toward the living room, praying for an escape. The creeping shadows hissed at her, swirling around her legs like a whirlpool as chilling, layered laughter erupted from all sides. Terror clawed at her mind. What if she was too late? What if she never made it out? Then the immense darkness coalesced, forming a barrier. Abigail's heart raced, thoughts spiraling into chaos. Could she fight? How? "Playtime isn't over yet," said the figure. Abigail spun, the weight on her chest growing heavier. "What do you want from me?" she shouted, but the only response was eerie, mocking laughter reverberating through the house. And then all at once, they stopped, leaving only silence. Time stretched thin. She stood, frozen, sensing a misstep could mean everything. Suddenly, a faint shimmer appeared, a flicker of light at the end of the hall. Hope? Or another lure? She had to make a choice. Would she cling to the faint glimmer of freedom, or plunge back into the shadows to retrieve what was lost? As she hesitated, the laughter returned, rich and deep, flooding her senses with darkness again. "Stay with us," and as she faced the abyss before her, the weight of her decision loomed, heavier than the shadows that crept closer. Abigail's heart thudded in her ears as the shadows whispered around her once more. The beckoning light at the end of the hall felt like a cruel mirage, drawn to it against her better judgment. She hesitated only a moment longer, driven by a primal instinct to survive. With every ounce of willpower, she sprinted towards the flicker, the laughter echoing like a sinister harbinger of doom. The light didn't falter, guiding her through the darkened home. "Just keep going," she whispered to herself, feeling the icy breath of the dark figure just behind her, the air thick with malice. As she sprinted, the walls seemed to ripple, almost alive, changing shape, the patterns shifting into grotesque faces that leered at her. She felt dizzy, disoriented. The house itself was conspiring against her. She could hear the little imp's voice again, mocking her from the recesses of the shadows. "Mommy, don't leave us." It sang sweetly, but that sweetness turned sour. Each word echoed like a distorted sound, piercing deep into her brain. The urge to turn around was strong, but she forced her eyes forward, focusing only on that light, that promise of escape. Finally reaching the flicker, she skidded to a stop, breathless. It was a small, shattered window, its dusty glass barely letting in the moonlight. She grasped at it instinctively, her fingers clawing against the jagged edges. Escape was so close, yet something deep inside warned her that jumping could be just as deadly. "No!" shrieked the voice behind her, low and deep, like thunder rumbling through a storm. The figure, now towering and shadowy, stretched its arms wide, blocking her path. "You wanted to see them? Stay here with us." A scream clawed at her throat as she turned, adrenaline pulsing through her. She had to make a choice. She could see their faces through the dark, Tommy and Lily, twisted and warped, helplessly reaching out to her. "Mommy, help us." Their eyes shone like mirrors, reflecting back the terror she felt. They were trapped, caught in a game of darkness and fear. A shiver of realization coursed through Abigail. Whatever was in this house wanted her to turn and join the twisted play. Would they still be there, the real ones, if she answered the call? No. I want tea, she screamed, her voice cracking the silence. The entity behind her lurched closer, a stench of decay wafting in with each movement. Leave them be. Every step. She needed to find a way to escape, to save what was left of her children before the darkness consumed everything. And just as she thought she might lose hope, a flicker of light flickered through the mist, a path untraveled. Could it lead to salvation? Or was it just another illusion? Abigail pressed on, heart racing, each footstep resonating with the whispers of the darkness behind her. The flickering light danced and twisted, pulling Abigail forward like a moth to a flame. Each step sent fresh waves of dread crashing through her, the laughter of the shadows punctuating the silence, gnawing at her fraying nerves. She pushed harder, heart slamming against her ribcage. The shadows writhed, taunting her, as if they were all too aware of her fear. "Mommy, where are you?" The tiny voice was so innocent, so familiar. It sent a chill down her spine, contrasting sharply with the malice that danced around her. But it didn't belong here, not in this cursed place. Desperation clawed at her throat as she stumbled into the light, revealing an old pathway littered with debris. The trees lined it like centuries high and looming, branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Her gaze darted around. She might be out of that cursed house, but wasn't he free yet? As she sprinted forward, the laughter morphed, bubbling up into something sinister, filling the air with an unwanted weight. "You can't escape, Abigail." The voice echoed, deeper, darker, almost joyous in its cruel revelry. She shook her head, sealing her ears against it. But then, in the maelstrom of her racing thoughts, something caught her attention. The trees were not just trees. She could see them. Faces twisted into grotesque forms, leering at her. They were watching, waiting. Panic threatened to consume her. "No, I won't listen," she yelled into the encroaching shadows. Each word felt like a small act of rebellion against the growing fear. A shadow leaped from behind a tree, darting toward her. It was small, child-sized. Abigail froze, knowing what it might mean. "Abigail!" It gleefully squeaked, its voice rising high above the whispers. Her heart plummeted. "Tommy," she whispered, dread mixing with shock. The figure materialized, and in that instant, the world fell away. It was Tommy, but twisted, his innocent face smeared with an unholy grin, eyes glowing with a predatory glint. The laughter of the shadows intensified, merging with a chorus of ghastly giggling surrounding her, turning her stomach. "Play with us, Mommy." His little fists waved eagerly. "We miss you. We want to play. It's fun here." "No." She stepped back, fear etching her features. "You're not him. You can't be." As she stumbled backward, the trees shifted ominously, the shadows eating away the path behind her. She turned to run, while rising in her throat, but a sudden darkness engulfed her, the weight of the forest pressing down. "Leave her," a shrill voice shrieked. A flash of pale light erupted in front of her, cutting through the murky depths. It was another figure, Lily, frail yet fierce, eyes wide with terror. "Run, Mommy." The laughter twisted into a screech of fury, drowning Lily's warning. And in that chaotic moment, Abigail made a decision. She burst forward, arms extended, trying to protect her lost children, yet the shadows were quick. They slithered in around her, a whirlwind of despair. Abigail pushed against it, feeling the pressure close in, the sickening grip of darkness tightening around her throat. Could she save them? Or would they be lost, swallowed by this relentless nightmare? A surge of adrenaline ripped through her. "I want to abandon you. Come with me." The air thickened, pulses of cold creeping in on her skin, shadows swirling like a storm just out of reach. But the darkness surged back, taunting, whispering of loss, of despair. Every step felt like wading deeper into quicksand, as if the forest wanted to drag her down into the depths with it. As the shadows encircled her, muffled laughter morphed into a cacophony of mocking voices. "Stay here, be with us. They're happy here. Join the fun." Abigail clutched at her chest, heart splintering. "What do you want from me?" Then, in the chaos, something glimmered in the distance, inviting yet dangerous. Another path opened a potential way out. Was it real? Or would it lead her deeper into the abyss? Without thinking, she sprung toward the light, her only hope, but the laughter transformed into wails, echoing like a siren's song, pleading for her to turn back. The air crackled with tension as she raced toward the uncertain glow, steeling herself against the encroaching shadows. Would she find the truth waiting on the other side, or would this light lead her to something worse than she could imagine? Abigail surged forward, her heartbeat drumming a frantic rhythm in her ears. The light flickered, pulsing with a strange urgency, as if it too was alive, beckoning her and promising warmth. It was a beacon of hope against the consuming darkness, but desperation burned in her gut. Hadn't the shadows already shown themselves as deceitful? "Mommy," that sweet voice echoed once more, slipping from between the cracks of reality and probing her heart with a vice grip. Tommy, his name clawed at her mind, dragging her back to the grotesque figure she had just seen. Was this place a trap, or a way back to him? The shadows tightened around her, squirming and writhing like snakes in a pit. There was no escaping their whispers now. "Maybe they really are happy here," they mocked, their voices weaving in and out of her thoughts. A spectral wave of nausea washed over her. "Lily!" She screamed into the night, praying the faint glimmer of light was not an illusion. "I'm coming. Hold on." As she plunged towards the glow, the forest's oppressive silence was shattered by bursts of unholy laughter surrounding her, rising in unison like a chorus of demons. Each cackle felt like fingers wrapping around her throat, beginning to close in. The light began to dim, flickering ominously, and Abigail felt her dread deepen. "No, no, stay lit," she cried, but the world around her seemed determined to snuff out that dying hope. Suddenly, Lily's figure appeared again, faint but unwavering, standing defiantly against the darkness. "Mommy, hurry!" she yelled, voice tinged with panic. The flickering light illuminated her frail form just enough to reveal terror etched in her features. Abigail pushed forward, pain flooding her lungs as she ran. She could feel the shadows tugging, pulling at her feet, urging her to stop. The trees lined the path like a barricade, faces contorted in glee, and they mocked her every step. "Join us, Abigail. They're not real. They don't want you here. Stop it," she bellowed, a defiant roar that tried to drown out the shadows. But rather than silence, they responded with cruel laughter, crescendoing to a point that felt like it would shatter her. With each stride, she felt time slip through her fingers like sand. The light at the end of the path flickered one last time, and panic clawed at her heart. It was fading. "Lily!" But just then, Abigail stumbled, falling hard to the ground. The breath knocked from her lungs. She turned to see darkness swirling around her like a tempest, unable to push it back. She felt disoriented, as if the very earth beneath her was shifting. "Why?" she gasped, scanning her surroundings for any sign of the light. When she looked back up, the true horror struck her. Tommy's figure stood amidst the shadows, no longer twisted, his innocent face framed by darkness, a friendly smile pulling at his lips. "We just wanted to play," he said, almost cheerfully. The laughter from the trees morphed into a deafening roar. The shadows surged forward, drawing closer, and her resolve began to crack. "Join us, Mommy." Tommy's voice rang hauntingly clear, wrapping around her like a shroud. With a stirring inside her, Abigail forced herself up from the ground, heart racing wildly. She wouldn't let this nightmare claim her. She had to fight for her children, for the truth mingling within the twisted shadows. But the darkness whispered louder, assaulting her thoughts. Would it be better to just give in? To trust that the shadows held some semblance of happiness for her children? Perhaps a reunion that this chaotic world had denied? Abigail took a deep breath and sprinted forward, determined yet terrified. But the path was shifting, the shadows deepening. Would joy come from the monstrous laughter? Or was she merely stumbling further into despair? Ahead, the flickering lights splintered into a multitude of glows, creating a labyrinth of choices. Each one glimmered with promise, but which would lead her to truth? As she stood at the precipice of decision, heart thundering in her chest, she could almost feel the darkness pulling her backward, inviting her to step into oblivion. "Lily! Tommy!" she shouted, desperately searching for her children in the shadows. "Where are you?" In that endless moment, a chilling voice echoed in tandem with her call. "They are here forever. With us. The shadows writhed impatiently around her, leaving one question hanging in the air like the chilling wind of a storm. Would she choose the light and risk losing her precious children, or yield to the darkness in what felt like sweet surrender? Abigail stood frozen, heart racing, as the chilling laughter faded into an unsettling silence that squeezed her chest like a vice. The labyrinth of lights pulsed around her, weaving a tapestry of hope and despair. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, steadying herself, but those fleeting moments of darkness only deepened the shadows in her mind. "Mommy," the voice echoed, layered with the haunting echoes of the trees. Trembling, she shook her head, knowing she couldn't let herself be ensnared by false illusions. "Lily, Tommy." Her cries pierced the night, filled with raw desperation. Then she spotted a flicker of movement far to her left. She bolted toward the glimmer, carrying the weight of her fear. Each step felt agonizing, heavy, as if the shadows tugged at her soul, begging her to surrender. Yet, all she could think of was getting to her children her reason to fight. As she ran, the forest morphed around her, branches stretching out like greedy hands, brushing against her skin with clammy fingers. The laughter returned, sharper now, pinning her against memories long buried. Was that really Tommy? The innocence in his voice felt surreal, a trap. She had seen remnants of truth behind the monstrous facade of twisted shadows before, and she wouldn't be fooled again. With straightened shoulders, Abigail slowed, awash with a creeping sense of unease. The light dimmed once more. Panic rose like bile in her throat. Not again. She panted. She reached out desperately toward the fading glow, but the darkness encroached further, swirling around her ankles. That moment, she noticed a figure small and frail, standing still among the shadows. Could it be her daughter, Lily? A shred of hope ignited in her chest, but as she drew closer, her heart plummeted. The figure morphed, distorting, melting into a grotesque imitation. "Well done, Mommy," it jeered, the mimicry of her daughter's voice twisting painfully. "You're getting so close." The distorted laughter thundered, booming from every direction, mingling with the tremors of the forest floor. Abigail stumbled backward. It was a trap. The shadows were playing games with her, cheating her fragile hope. But amidst her despair, she caught sight of something pure, a luminous essence hanging in the air, suspended like a lingering dream. The light. She gasped, struggling against the creeping dread. The brightness pulsed like a heartbeat, promising her salvation, a return to her children if only she could reach it. What if it was the way? Mustering every ounce of strength, she pressed forward, tears cascading down her cheeks, mixing with the dirt and despair of the forest floor. The shadows writhed and hissed, their creeping whispers growing frantic. "Come back to us. They don't want you, Abigail. Only we can make you whole." The cacophony grew, surrounding her, desperate and pleading. The light danced just out of her reach. It flickered one last time, illuminating a horrific figure looming behind her. Abigail spun around, dread pooling in her stomach. It was Tommy, his smile wide and unlike any she had seen before, eyes pitch black. "Why don't you come and play?" he asked softly. She struggled, torn between the warmth of his voice and the chaos undulating in the air. "You're not him," she screamed. "You're not my son." But as the shadows closed in, the space around her twisted and fractured. She could feel their icy touch creeping up her legs, threatening to drag her back into the dark. "Tommy," she screamed, the sound echoing into that gaping void. In a moment of sheer terror, the ground beneath her feet seemed to give way, and in that instant, she felt herself being pulled in every direction, as though the shadows conspired against her resolve. Her breath quickened. The darkness roared, filling her ears with a murderous cacophony. "You have to choose," it cried, no longer sweet, but vicious and mocking. Abigail's mind raced. There had to be a way out, a way to save her children without losing everything. Perhaps the light was salvation, or perhaps it was simply another trap. All at once, a realization struck her somewhere in the chaos. There lay a truth buried deep within fear. "Mommy, please." The plea blended with the shadows, twisting her resolve as she braced herself for whatever came next. But there, just beyond the reach of despair, she caught a glimpse of something, a way forward. Would she dare step into the light? That answer flashed like lightning in her mind, both terrifying and electric. And then the ground began to shudder, the shadows convulsing violently, as if they too anticipated her next move. Decide. The voices shrieked. What would she choose? The illuminated path towards unknown salvation, or the abyss echoing with the faces of her children? She had to act before the darkness swallowed her whole. But time slipped away, seconds stretching into eternity, uncertainty swirling around her like a fog. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, ready to leap into darkness or light. The moment her eyes fluttered open, the forest erupted in chaos. The laughter returned, shrill and horrifying, like nails dragging down a chalkboard. Abigail felt the shadows bearing down on her, thick and suffocating, as if the very air conspired against her. Choose. The voice echoed, vibrating through the ground beneath her. A frenzied thought collided with her fear. She had to trust her instincts, but the weight of despair made it harder. The flicker of light called to her, a siren's whisper in the cacophony of dread. Just then, the wailing of a child sent icy fingers crawling up her spine. Was that Lily? Mommy. The voice, innocent but mingled with a dread she couldn't shake, pulled her towards the encroaching pitch. Please come to me. Her heart ached at the sound. How could she not follow? But as she stumbled toward where the voice came from, the darkness flickered, revealing more grotesque figures, forming shadows twisted in violent glee. Each breath felt laden with dread, choking her resolve. The luminous essence pulsed brighter, overwhelming her senses, yet it felt like a trap set against her by the shadows, a mockery of her hopes. How could she know which way to turn when everything around her twisted into a grotesque performance of her worst fears? Mommy, it hurts. The voice was shrill now, almost breaking under the weight of anguish. Abigail turned back to the light, the very air around her crackling with desperation. If she reached for it, could she grasp hope amid the torment? Choose. Choose, whispers curled around her like smoke, each word dripping with malice. Symbols of her children's innocent faces distorted before her, becoming weathered masks of her mind's artifice. With every minute hesitation, the shadows surged forward, pushing her closer to the brink. Enough! Abigail roared into the void. With fury chipping away at her fear, she sprinted toward the light, desperate to escape the grasp of malevolent forces that sought to consume her. The ground trembled beneath her feet, but she pressed on, heart hammering tightly against her chest. Then she was there, free. The blinding light enveloped her, wrapping her in warmth, making the terror fade for an instant. Relief swept over her, flushing through her like a river of hope. But just as quickly, the warmth faded, and all she saw was darkness. She was surrounded by nothingness now, the sound of distant laughter echoing here too. It slithered through the air, filling her ears with malice and despair. Where are my children? She screamed, the panic clawing its way up her throat. What had she stepped into? But a figure loomed in front of her. Tall, thin, skeletal. It stood, looming like a specter from the depths. Its smile mirrored the haunting grin of Tommy. Why would you want them back? It hissed. They're free here, and so are you, or will you drown with your memories? Abigail's chest tightened. The laughter morphed into cries, each child's voice calling her deeper into the void she had entered. Lily, Tommy, she called, desperation spilling into the emptiness around her. Then silence. The void thickened around her, pulsating with residual energy. The very air constricted painfully. Could her choice have sealed their fate? Had she picked the light only to find an even darker path? Abigail's heart raced anew, torn by the very real shadows of doubt. What have I done? She whispered, dread pooling in her gut as she turned, searching the abyss for her children's familiar faces. Yet behind the skeletal figure loomed another flicker, an echo of the light she'd seen, growing faint, but real. Was it a way out, or merely a deceptive glimmer of hope? Would she dare venture further into the nothingness, or cling to the fading light that promised more darkness? Before she could make her choice, a surge of energy shot through her. It was as if the shadows anticipated her decision, waiting, hungry for her next move. And from the depths of silence, a voice sliced through. Mommy, help us! The ground beneath her shifted again. What lay ahead was a gamble, eternal darkness, or the trembling flicker of hope. Which would she accept? Would it lead to her salvation or their final end? Abigail stood there, weightless in the void, paralyzed by haunting choices and faceless memories. Her heart thrashed violently as the echoes of her children filled the silence, pleading, taunting, "Help us!" The distorted cries clung to her, battling the fog of despair closing around her, each syllable a harbinger of her inevitable fate. Was the light a mere illusion? She could feel the shadowy specters swirling behind her, sultry whispers crawling beneath her skin. But the plea of her children ripped through that uncertainty like a shard of glass. "Lily, Tommy," she cried out, determination wrestling with fear. "Come join us." The skeletal figure wavered, the ghastly grin unnaturally wide. Frost raced along her spine, but Abigail stepped forward, arms wide, desperation igniting a spark within her. This couldn't be the end. She refused to falter. As if echoing her thoughts, the ground beneath her trembled, the very fabric of the void shifting. The dim light flickered again, a beacon in the night that must hold some truth. She could feel it. "I will not let you take them," she breathed, and in that instant, tears streamed down her face. She lunged toward the flicker. Each step wielded a pulse of courage, a visceral battle between hope and despair. The darkness clawed at her ankles, the laughter warping into a frenzy. But she pressed on, fueled by the memories of laughter shared, bedtime stories, and tender hugs. The eerie call of her children erupted from the shadows, pulling her deeper, raw and sorrowful. "Mommy, we need you. If you need me, then I need you to fight," she shouted back, emotions boiling over, determination blooming into a fierce resolve. The figure loomed closer, but now, Abigail faced it, defiance radiating from her core. And no longer trapped in the web of their deceit, she turned, running toward the light. As she reached the edge of the flickering path, the darkness shrieked around her, a tempest of fury uncoiling behind her. She felt the grip of shadow loosen as she propelled herself forward. Suddenly, warmth enveloped her, a flood of light breaking through the heavy veil. In that moment, Abigail broke through. She landed hard, breathless on the familiar grass of her lawn, the comforting sense of home swimming around her like whispers of salvation. "Mommy?" Lily stood there, her tiny frame illuminated by moonlight, eyes wide and innocent. Abigail stumbled forward, a surge of love blinding her as she reached for her daughter. "Lily." She gathered the child close, tears pouring down her cheeks. "Where's Tommy?" The question sent cold dread creeping back into her gut, but as she scanned the yard, the shadows receding, she saw him appear from behind the tree line, innocent and whole. "Mommy." Tommy's voice rang out, and Abigail's heart soared. Yet fear lingered like smoke in the air. The darkness had tried to take them, tried to poison her memories. "Are you both okay?" She swept her arms around her children, squeezing as if they might disappear again. "Did you defeat the shadows?" Tommy's small voice trembled with excitement. But Abigail felt the uncertainty nestling against her heart. "Yes," she whispered, squeezing them tighter. "They can't hurt us anymore. We're safe now." But deep inside, she knew the shadows didn't disappear so easily. They lingered, a warning, a reminder that darkness can be both relentless and patient. As Abigail tucked her children into bed that night, she felt the looming shadows watch from afar, like predators waiting for a moment of weakness. But she wouldn't let fear rule her, not anymore. She curled up on the couch, exhaustion edging in, heart still racing. With each breath, she reminded herself of her choices, of the fight that emerged from fear. She'd protect her family at all costs through laughter and tears, through light and the ever-looming shadows. Just before sleep pulled her under, a soft whisper reached her ears, caressed her soul, an echo of her children's giggles. They were safe. And for now, that was enough. Standing tall, Abigail promised to remain vigilant. If the shadows returned, they would face them together. Together, always, she murmured, wrapping her arms around her sleeping children, knowing that as long as they believed in the light, they could keep the darkness at bay. But as the night deepened, she felt that familiar chill creep back, the shadows lurking just beyond the edges of her dreams. The game was never truly over. But for now, they were victorious, and in that victory, they found their moment of peace. Don't forget the moment you sign on. You step into stories that matter. Don't let yourself miss a beat. You need to subscribe now. Hit that button and never look back. Smash the like button now so we can keep those stories flowing. Flood the comments with your theories, reactions, and how this story made you feel. Let's hear your take on Abigail's journey. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel the thrill of these conclusions. Don't wait even one more second. Support this adventure into the unknown.